Hello and welcome to another edition of the GRC Community Podcast. I'm James Dorrington. I'm joined again by Adam Anumley today, who is the CRO of the General Bank of Canada. Today we're going to talk about AI and the risks associated with that. So this is a topic where I'm still learning, as I'm sure most of the world is. I can say that unashamedly because it sounds like even Elon is still learning, right? As we found out recently, and he's quite happy to talk about that publicly. But yeah, I know this is a subject where I think you've probably gathered a bit more information than me at the moment on this, Adam. So I wanted to get your reflections on it and how you see, for example, for the General Bank of Canada, and I'm sure it's the same for all firms, where you see risks coming from and the work you're doing to try and understand that a bit better. Do you have an AI policy, for example? How's that going? So yeah, it'd be good to understand a bit more.
Absolutely. So I really like how you positioned it. We're all learning, right?
Absolutely.
The difference between success and failure is how much are you willing to learn?
Correct.
Right? And I think society needs to realize that because it's a very complex topic under the hood. And now it just got simpler, Before, when there was this cloud boom, it took a few years to be able to have your cloud facility in place, right?
True.
Now, it's more accessible than ever, right? I can just go on ChatGPT and use it for free, pay $20 a month and be able to have access to better features. And I'm doing AI suddenly, right? That's oversimplified it, right?
Sure.
But in our organization, we are looking at this with a lot of interest because there is a strong value promise, right?
That's true.
There is the easy short-term value promise of unlocking value, of efficiency, doing the work of 2 weeks in 2 hours, right?
Yeah.
And that's the easiest and most accessible use case.
Yeah.
And yes, we're taking advantage of it, but we are careful in things that can actually go wrong, like data loss, making sure that we have the right safeguards in place to avoid any of the data risks that existed before AI, right?
Of course.
You have the medium-term risks and use cases that come with that about protecting value, right? Can we rely on AI only to basically make decisions? Can we rely on AI only to detect fraud, right?
Yeah.
Not yet, but we need to monitor that, to pilot those use cases and make a decision on that.
Yeah.
And then on the long term, can we actually just forego, our intelligence and our creativity and let AI basically create net new products for us?
Yeah.
Not yet, of course. That's where a lot of learning needs to be done, and it depends on the success of the short-term and medium case use cases, right?
Yeah.
But from a risk perspective, you have 3 main risks, right? You have the strategic risk of not doing it, right?
Yeah.
Do you want to just wait and see? Yeah. Or do you want to be an
opportunity, not getting in there first?
Yes, exactly. Because there's a lot of learning that you do, even by trying and failing, right?
Absolutely.
You just need to create the right environment to fail.
Correct.
Instead of letting the market dictate your failure.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
Right? And then you have the risks of using AI, right? Which, again, are technology risks that we knew before. Resiliency, data loss, cyber, all of that.
Yeah, I think when we were talking about this earlier, I threw at you that there are some sort of similarities with model risk as well, because there is an underlying code, an algorithm.
Yes.
Where you put something in at one end and something comes out the other end. So there's some kind of similarities there as well as another type of risk that is interwoven, where we can take learnings from the past into the future for sure. As well. Yeah.
And risk models are basically a primitive form, if you will.
Absolutely. That's what I'm getting at.
And yes, all the risks are there. Transparency, explainability, bias. I put information in and it comes out with a decision, recommendation.
Exactly.
How much can I trust that? Right?
Yeah.
And do I know enough? Do I know what's under the hood to be able to do that?
Yeah.
Right. And for now, the super high majority of the society, the answer is no.
Yeah.
So what do you do with that?
Yeah. No. Absolutely. So what about things like, recently on LinkedIn, I was asking, do we feel that AI, in terms of a taxonomy, should that sit in technology? Is it an external risk? Is it something that would be in our kind of people risks? Because ultimately, people need to be careful about how they're using it and how that might affect behaviour in the firm as well. I mean, don't get me wrong, it was a resounding, this is a technology risk. But be good as well to get your thoughts on whether, is it just a technology? I mean, we just spoke about risk, don't get me wrong, but in terms of trying to categorise when this bed's in, we're going off, we're doing assessments, things like control testing, etc., etc. And when we get documents in place, policies and standards to support the use of AI in the firm, is it just a technology risk, do you think, or do you think there are elements of it that might sit in other parts of the taxonomy?
No, you'll see it everywhere. It's like a reputation risk. We're not going to make it the same.
Pervasive.
Yeah,
pervasive. Yeah.
We all have the same discussion, but all I'm saying here is, yes, as a chief risk officer, I'm always asked, do you have an AI policy? I say, yes, I have a technology policy.
Right.
And I will reinforce it with what we learned from AI, which is a technology.
Yes, absolutely.
However,
I agree with you, yeah.
You have AI everywhere. And I would like to simplify it with like the good old trilogy of people, process, and technology.
Yeah.
You have AI for people, which is a tool that makes people's lives easier. We already see that. It makes my life easier, right? But we need to understand how far can we go in saying yes? When do we say no? And what are the risks associated with that?
Yeah.
But AI is like the internet now, right? When the internet came out, we didn't go and tell people don't use internet. I mean, yes, some knee-jerk reactions were like that in the beginning, but now you have internet in every company and people actually need to use it. It's basically a society requirement and imperative now.
It's made our life easier, faster, and more accessible to gaining knowledge, isn't it? And
absolutely,
it's a very similar thing. And things like ChatGPT obviously, leverage the internet.
Yeah.
But I think you're right in terms of there was skepticism, wasn't there, when the internet first became a thing, particularly in the workplace. Right. And I think we're seeing similar sort of skepticism now. And arguably you could say that will turn out okay, and it will with AI. But I think people who are far cleverer than us are seeing potential, more risk.
Yes.
Than we had originally with the internet involved.
Absolutely. And the velocity is higher. Like what happened over 10 years with the internet is going to happen over 1 year.
Agreed.
With AI.
Yeah, agreed.
We already see actually those pivotal moments that already happened just between the early 2023
absolutely
till now. And I mean, it's now a requirement now to at least understand what it is about and do this mainstream training on risk killing. I will call it the great risk killing of society when it comes to AI.
That's very true, actually. Yeah, it's a good term.
And then you have the incremental use cases, like the process element of that trilogy, right? Where you have AI for finance, AI for risk, AI for supply chain. Like all these very specialized use cases where you can actually use AI as an augmented capability of what exists, right? And that's where the upskilling is going to happen.
Absolutely.
And I think there is no harm in starting to explore these because that's where you can actually build your competitive advantage from an organizational perspective.
Yeah, you'd be crazy not to.
Exactly, because,
You'd like to think that it would increase productivity to a level off the charts, right? Which is kind of where what Musk was talking about when he was talking to Sunak, when he said about, you'd only have to have a job if you want to. That's an extreme way of talking about massive increases in productivity, isn't it?
Absolutely. And, we just had that conversation at Risk Minds where that video was played.
Right.
And we had that debates around basically the future, right? And which brings me to the third element, which is technology. AI is a technology, but it's a technology that very few people understand. I myself don't understand,
Of course.
any of it. Like, I'm a business person,
Yeah.
and I did a few technology courses, but it's not closely enough
Indeed.
to be able to understand neural networks and deep learning and machine learning. But at some point, we're going to have to understand
Yeah.
at least the basics, because it's going to go fast. And at some point, true AI, may not be something that we all like, as much as we like ChatGPT.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think it's the element of unintended consequence, you know. And I heard a story recently, and I don't know if it was 100% true, but it's why I talk about kind of human relations element of a taxonomy, because I heard an anecdotal story about a person that had used ChatGPT in the workplace to produce a report that was then presented to a client that the client liked, acted on it, did well out of it. That was all fine, and everybody benefited. But the firm itself discovered that this is what the person did, and basically fired them for using, in their view, a piece of technology to do the job of what the person gets paid to do. The reason I'm telling that story is because of unintended consequences and the firm not having a policy around that, and the person was actually able to go back and sue his former employer or her. So I think there's these certain elements that companies need to think about with their risk, and think about how they control or mitigate those elements of risk, and not just focus on what the technology might do to the company, but how the people element works and the process element works, and think about all these elements, not just the technology or how we might be threatened by it from the outside,
Yeah, absolutely. And be pragmatic.
Yeah.
Not punitive, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
If go back 20 years.
Embrace it.
And if you go back 20 years, just with the example, what will we do to someone who actually found something on the internet and used it?
Correct. Yeah,
you're right.
And I'm sure there was stories about that back then as well, but it kind of feels like that was so long ago that we may not have learned properly from it. But I think we have to draw back on those learnings and bring them into this.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, that was another fascinating chat. Thanks, Adam. And it's always a pleasure.
Same here. Thank you.
Cheers.